Subscribe to my YouTube channel for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight, turning the quiet streets of Millbrook into rivers of memories. Sarah wished she could forget. She stood by her kitchen window, watching the droplets race down the glass, each one carrying a piece of her past she thought she'd buried forever. The old Victorian house felt emptier than usual tonight, its creaking walls seeming to whisper secrets she wasn't ready to hear. It had been exactly 2 years since David walked out of her life, leaving behind nothing but the faint scent of his cologne on the pillows, and a wedding ring that still sat in the drawer of her nightstand. Years since she'd learned to sleep alone, to cook for one, to build a life from the fragments of what they'd once shared. She'd convinced herself she was healing, that the sharp edges of her broken heart had finally smoothed into something manageable. But tonight felt different. Tonight, the storm outside seemed to match the tempest brewing within her chest. The clock on the mantelpiece chimed 11 times, its deep resonance echoing through the silence. Sarah pulled her silk robe tighter around her shoulders and turned away from the window. She'd been restless all evening, unable to focus on her book, unable to settle into the comfortable routines that had become her armor against loneliness. Something in the air felt charged, electric, as if the universe was holding its breath for something momentous to happen. She was about to climb the stairs to bed when she heard a sound that made her blood freeze in her veins. 3 deliberate knocks at her front door. Slow, measured, familiar in a way that made her heart skip several beats. She glanced at the clock again. Who would be visiting at this hour? Especially in weather like this. Sarah's bare feet moved silently across the hardwood floor, her pulse quickening with each step. Through the frosted glass panels beside the door, she could see the silhouette of a man, tall and broad-shouldered, standing perfectly still despite the rain pelting down around him. Her hand trembled as she reached for the porch light switch, but something held her back. Part of her already knew who stood on the other side of that door, and part of her wasn't sure she was strong enough to face the truth. The knocking came. Again, more urgent this time, and with it came a voice she hadn't heard in 2 years, but would recognize anywhere. "Sarah, please. I know you're in there." David. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her as she pressed her back against the door, her heart hammering so hard she was certain he could hear it through the wood. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when she'd finally started to rebuild the pieces of herself he'd shattered. Not when she'd almost convinced herself that she was better off without him. "Sarah, I'm not leaving until we talk. I know I don't deserve it, but please, just give me 5 minutes." His voice was different, somehow rougher, weighted with something she couldn't quite identify. Regret? Desperation? The David she'd known had been confident to the point of arrogance, never one to beg or plead. But this man sounded broken, vulnerable in a way that pulled at every instinct she had to comfort and heal. She closed her eyes and tried to steady her breathing, but memories flooded through her like a dam bursting. David laughing at her terrible jokes over morning coffee. David holding her during thunderstorms because he knew they frightened her. David promising her forever on a beach in Santorini, slipping a ring onto her finger as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. And then the other memories, the ones that cut deeper. David working late again, always working late. David's phone buzzing at dinner, during movies, during the quiet moments when she'd tried to reconnect with the man she'd fallen in love with. David's eyes growing distant, his kisses becoming perfunctory, his touch becoming rare. "I made a mistake, Sarah. The biggest mistake of my life." The words hung in the air between them, separated only by inches of wood and 2 years of silence. Sarah's hand hovered over the deadbolt, her mind racing through 1,000 different scenarios. What if she opened the door? What if she didn't? What if this was her chance to finally get the closure she'd never received? Or what if it was just another opportunity for him to break her heart all over again? The rational part of her brain screamed warnings. Don't do it. You've worked too hard to get where you are. You've built a life without him. You're stronger now, independent, whole. But her heart, that treacherous organ that had never quite learned to protect itself, whispered something entirely different. What if he's changed? What if he's really sorry? What if this is fate giving you a second chance? Please, Sarah. I've been driving for 6 hours in this storm just to get here. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I need you to know that. Not a single day has passed where I haven't regretted walking away from us. Her fingers found the deadbolt before her mind could stop them. The metal was cold against her skin, a stark reminder of the barriers she'd built around herself. Physical ones, emotional ones, all designed to keep the pain at bay. But as she stood there, listening to the rain and the sound of David's ragged breathing on the other side of the door, she realized that all those barriers had also kept out. The possibility of healing, of redemption, of love. With a click that seemed to echo through the empty house, she turned the lock. The door opened to reveal David soaked to the bone, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his usually pristine clothes wrinkled and clinging to his frame. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch, those deep brown eyes that had once held her entire world, now rimmed with exhaustion and filled with something that looked dangerously close to hope. Hello, Sarah. David. Her voice came out, as barely a whisper, her hand gripping the doorframe for support. What are you doing here? He took a tentative step forward, then seemed to think better of it, staying safely on the other side of the threshold. I know this is unexpected. I know I have no right to show up here after what I did, but I needed to see you. I needed to tell you. Tell me what? The words came out sharper than she'd intended. 2 years of suppressed anger and hurt, finally finding their voice. That you're sorry? That you made a mistake? Do you have any idea what you put me through, David? Do you have any idea what it was like to wake up one morning and find a note on the kitchen table instead of my husband? He flinched as if she'd struck him, his shoulders sagging under the weight of her words. I know I handled it all wrong. I was a coward, Sarah. I was scared and stupid, and I convinced myself that I was doing the right thing by leaving. I thought you deserved better than what I was giving you. That wasn't your decision to make. Tears were threatening now, hot and insistent behind her eyes. If you were struggling, if you were unhappy, we could have talked about it. We could have worked through it together. That's what marriage is supposed to be, 2 people facing life together, not one person deciding for both of them. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I've regretted it every single day since. David ran a hand through his wet hair, his gesture achingly familiar. I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me, because I was too proud to admit I was drowning. The promotion, the pressure, the constant travel, I thought I was building something for us. But I was just building walls between us instead. Sarah studied his face, searching for signs of the man she'd once known. The years had been kind to him physically. He was still devastatingly handsome, still possessed of that easy charm that had first captured her attention at a college party 15 years ago. But there was something different now. Something harder around the edges, as if the confidence that had once defined him had been tempered by experience and regret. Where have you been, David? What happened after you left? He was quiet for a long moment, rain dripping from his clothes onto her porch. I went to Chicago first. Threw myself into work even harder, thinking that's what I needed. Made partner at the firm, got the corner office, the recognition I thought I wanted. But none of it mattered without you to share it with. So you came back, not right away. I spent months convincing myself that I'd made the right choice, that you were better off without me. I even bull quotes. He paused, his voice catching slightly. I even dated someone else for a while. Rebecca, one of the associates at the firm. She was smart, beautiful, everything I thought I should want. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow, even though she'd suspected as much. During the darkest days after he'd left, she'd tortured herself with images of him with another woman. Someone who could give him whatever it was she'd apparently failed to provide. But, she prompted, her voice barely steady. But she wasn't. You. Nobody could be you, Sarah. I realized that I didn't leave because you weren't enough. I left because I was too broken to appreciate what I had. I was so focused on providing for our future that I forgot to live in our present. I forgot to see you, really see you. And by the time I realized what I was losing, the damage was already done. Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt standing there in her robe, her heart laid bare by his unexpected confession. You hurt me, David. You hurt me in ways I didn't know were possible. Do you know what? It's like to question everything about yourself, to wonder if you were ever really loved, or if it was all just convenient. I loved you, he said fiercely, taking another step forward. I loved you from the moment I saw you in Professor Henderson's psychology class, drawing little hearts in the margins of your notebook. I loved you when you cried during every romantic movie, even the terrible ones. I loved you when you sang off-key in the shower, and when you left coffee rings on the antique table your grandmother gave us. I loved you when you supported my dreams, even when they meant sacrificing your own. And I loved you when you stood by me through law school, even though it meant delaying your own graduate studies. Then why did you leave? The question came out raw, desperate, carrying the weight of 2 years of unanswered questions. If you loved me so much, why did you walk away? David's composure finally cracked, and she saw tears mixing with the rain on his cheeks. Because I was drowning, Sarah. The pressure, the expectations, the constant feeling that I wasn't good enough, smart enough, successful enough, it was eating me alive. And instead of talking to you about it, instead of leaning on the one person who'd always been in my corner, I convinced myself that you'd be better off without a failure like me. You were never a failure, David. You were struggling, and that's not the same thing. I know that now. But it took losing you to learn it. It took 2 years of therapy and self-reflection, and nights where I couldn't sleep because I missed the sound of your breathing next to me. It took dating someone else to realize that what we had wasn't just love. It was partnership, friendship, a connection that I was too blind to appreciate. The rain was letting up slightly, the violent downpour settling into a gentler rhythm that seemed to mirror the shift in their conversation. Sarah found herself stepping back, creating space for him to enter, though she wasn't sure if that was wisdom or weakness guiding her movements. Come in, she said quietly. You're soaking wet. David hesitated at the threshold, as if crossing it would be a line he couldn't uncross. Are you sure? No, she admitted. But I'm doing it anyway. He stepped inside, bringing with him the scent of rain and something else, that cologne she'd tried so hard to forget. The house suddenly felt smaller with him in it, as if his presence had shifted the very molecules of air around them. He looked around the living room, taking in the changes she'd made. The new artwork on the walls, the rearranged furniture, the books scattered on the coffee table. It looks different, he observed. I redecorated. I needed to make it mine again. She moved to the linen closet and pulled out a towel, handing it to him while maintaining careful distance. I'll make some coffee. You look like you could use something warm. Sarah, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. But it's late, you're wet, and despite everything, I'm not cruel enough to send you back out into that storm without at least offering you something to drink. She busied herself in the kitchen, grateful for the familiar motions of measuring coffee and adding water to the machine. David stood awkwardly in the doorway, cowling off his hair, and she was struck by how strange it was to see him in her space again. For 2 years, this house had been her sanctuary, her place of healing and growth. Now his presence seemed to charge the air with possibility and danger in equal measure. Thank you, he said when she handed him a steaming mug. For the coffee. For letting me in. For not calling the police. The night is young, she replied, and was surprised when he laughed a real laugh that transformed his face back into something closer to the man she'd fallen in love with. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, the space between them feeling like an ocean. Sarah tucked her legs beneath her, hyper-aware of every movement, every breath, every stolen glance. The silence stretched between them, not uncomfortable exactly, but heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. I saw your mother last month, David said finally, at the grocery store. She told me you went back to school. Sarah nodded, surprised by the warmth that spread through her chest at the mention of her studies. I finished my master's degree last year. I'm working at the Family Counseling Center downtown now. That's wonderful. I always knew you'd be amazing at that. His smile was genuine, proud even, and it made her heart do complicated things she wasn't prepared for. Are you ... Are you happy? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications she wasn't sure she was ready to explore. Was she happy? She'd convinced herself she was, had built a life filled with meaningful work and good friends and small pleasures. But sitting here with David, she realized there had been a hollowness to her contentment, a sense that she was going through the motions of happiness rather than truly living it. I'm content, she said finally. I have a job I love, friends who care about me, a life that's mine. It's a good life. But are you happy? He pressed gently. She met his eyes, those deep brown eyes that had once been her home, and felt something crack open inside her chest. I thought I was. I thought I'd moved on, built something new from the ashes of what we used to have. But seeing you here, talking to you like this, she trailed off, unable to finish the thought. I know, he said softly. I know because I felt the same way. Content but not happy. Functional but not whole. Like I was living someone else's life, instead of my own. David, why are you really here? After 2 years of silence, why now? He set his coffee mug down on the table and turned to face her fully. Because I realized that I've been living like a coward. I made the biggest mistake of my life, and instead of fighting for what we had, I ran away and convinced myself it was noble. But it wasn't noble, it was selfish and stupid, and I've regretted it every single day since. And you think you can just show up here and we'll pick up where we left off? That 2 years of silence can be erased by a midnight visit in the rain. No, he said firmly. I don't think that. I don't expect that. I know I destroyed your trust, and I know that trust is something that has to be earned back slowly, carefully, if at all. But I had to try, Sarah. I had to at least try to fight for us this time. What about your life in Chicago? Your job, your... What did you call her, Rebecca? Rebecca and I ended things months ago. And as for Chicago... He paused as if gathering courage for what he was about to say. I put in my resignation yesterday. I'm done running away from the things that matter. Sarah felt the air leave her lungs in a rush. You quit your job? I quit my job, I sold my condo. I've been living like a ghost for 2 years, Sarah, going through the motions of a life that didn't mean anything without you in it. I can practice law anywhere, but I can't love anyone else. I tried, and it nearly killed me. The words hung in. The air between them, raw and honest and terrifying in their implications. Sarah felt as if she was standing at the edge of a cliff, teetering between safety and the unknown. Part of her wanted to run, to protect the peace she'd worked so hard to build. But another part of her, the part that had never stopped loving him despite everything, was whispering that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to reclaim the life she'd lost. I don't know if I can do this again, she whispered. I don't know if I'm strong enough to risk my heart on someone who's already broken it once. I know, he said, and his voice was thick with emotion. I know I'm asking for something I don't deserve. But I'm not the same man who left you, Sarah. I've spent 2 years learning how to be better, how to communicate, how to be a partner instead of just a provider. I've learned that success means nothing if you don't have someone to share it with, and that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every single day. Pretty words, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. They're not just words. Let me prove it to you. Let me show you that I've changed, that I've learned from my mistakes. I'm not asking you to trust me right away. I'm asking you to give me a chance to earn your trust back. Sarah looked at him then, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility, maybe. Or vulnerability. The cocky confidence that had once defined him had been replaced by something deeper, more real. This was a man who had been broken and had learned to rebuild himself, not just professionally but emotionally. What would that look like? She asked quietly. If I said yes, what would that mean? It would mean starting over, dating again, getting to know each other again, building something new from the ground up. It would mean couples therapy, communication, honesty about our fears and dreams and everything in between. It would mean me proving to you every single day that I'm worth the risk. And if it doesn't work, if we try and it falls apart again, then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we fought for something worth fighting for, instead of just walking away when things got difficult. Sarah stood up abruptly, pacing to the window where the rain was now just gentle pattering against the glass. The storm was passing, leaving behind the clean, fresh scent of renewal. She could feel David's eyes on her, could sense him holding his breath while he waited for her answer. I have conditions, she said finally, not turning around. Anything. I want to take things slow. Painfully slow. I want to date you like we're strangers meeting for the first time. I want flowers and awkward first kisses and long conversations about everything and nothing. I want to fall in love with you again. But I want to do it with my eyes wide open this time. Done. I want complete honesty. No more protecting me from your problems. No more shouldering burdens alone. We're a team. Or we're nothing. I want that too. And I want you to understand that I'm not the same woman you left. I'm stronger now, more independent. I have my own life and my own dreams, and I won't give those up for anyone ever again. I wouldn't want you to. The woman you've become is even more incredible than the one I fell in love with all those years ago. She turned around then and found him standing just a few feet away, his expression open and hopeful and terrified all at once. Are you sure about this, David? Are you sure you're ready to do the work it's going to take to rebuild what we had? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling as if she were about to jump off that cliff she'd been teetering on. Then I guess we're doing this. The smile that spread across David's face was like sunrise after the longest night. We're doing this. But not tonight, she said quickly, suddenly aware of how intimate the moment had become. Tonight you're going to drive to a hotel and get some rest. Tomorrow you're going to call me and ask me on a proper date. We're going to do this right. Tomorrow, he agreed, and she could hear the promise in his voice. He gathered up his jacket and moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the doorknob. Sarah? Yes? Thank you for opening the door, for listening, for giving me a chance I don't deserve. Don't make me regret it, she said softly. I won't. I promise you, I won't. After he left, Sarah stood in her living room for a long time, listening to the silence and trying to process what had just happened. The house felt different now, charged with possibility and hope, and the lingering scent of his cologne. She'd opened the door to her past, and in doing so, had maybe opened the door to her future as well. As she climbed the stairs to her bedroom, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. Her reflection looked different somehow, more alive, more vibrant, as if David's presence had awakened something in her that had been sleeping for 2 years. She touched her lips, already anticipating that first awkward kiss he'd promised her, and smiled. Maybe she should have never opened the door. Maybe she was setting herself up for heartbreak all over again. But as she slipped into bed and listened to the last of the rain pattering against her window, she realized that some risks were worth taking. Some doors were meant to be opened, even if you couldn't see what lay on the other side. Especially then. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new conversations, new opportunities to build something beautiful from the ashes of what they'd lost. But tonight, for the first time in 2 years, Sarah fell asleep with hope in her heart and the promise of tomorrow on her lips. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean and ready for new beginnings.